Hello, this is Rachel from 7 and All, and I am here today talking about what homeschool was like in February 2023. Alright, so homeschool updates and monthly recaps are a new series that I started this school year. If you would like to stick around for these type of recaps, definitely make sure you are subscribed to 7 and All down below. And if you're new to how my monthly recaps work, I will start by giving an update and kind of highlighting some of the resources we're using as I update in a few different subjects that we are doing in our homeschool. Then after that kind of nitty-gritty, looking at the books, looking at what we've done, after that I will give some more deeper reflections that have come to my mind and come to my heart as we've been homeschooling throughout this month. So that's kind of the rhythm of how this goes. I'll start with some resources we've been using, update on how those are going, then have some deeper reflections, and if I have time, I will finish out this video talking about some progress I've made in my goals. I'm gonna keep an eye and see how long this takes because I don't want it to be too long. Now, to start off with, I do want to highlight our science that we've been going through. We are using Gentle and Classical Nature, Volume 2, and I do have a video directly dedicated to that program that I can show you down below. This is a fairly new course. It just released last year, so I feel like you don't hear about it all that much, but I really do want people to know about it because if you are looking for an elementary science curriculum that's focused on oceans, like a marine biology themed science, ocean themed science study for elementary kids, I think this is absolutely fantastic. It is so rich. We are having so much fun with it. During the last month, this month of February, we've been focusing on whales and dolphins, which has just been an awesome subject. This was just one book that I had bought, Baby Whales Drink Milk. This is from the Let's Read and Find Out science series, which you can usually find these books quite affordably on Book Outlet, the books from this series. So that's one book I had, but our library actually did have a pretty good selection of whale books. So I was reading whale-related books on repeat throughout this month. We've got some of our little vocab cards right here. La ballena, el krill, marsopa, orca. So we've been going over whales and dolphins. That's been fun. There's some really good nature documentary type movies. We have been watching Dolphin Reef by Disney Nature, and also the BBC, is it called Planet Earth? And that has some episodes on deep oceans and humpback whales. So we've been getting some good screen time in with those ocean documentaries. We've been reading great books. Highly recommend this. I feel like my kids are getting a great experience of learning about ocean animals, and I am also learning new things. So Gentle and Classical Nature Volume 2, check that out if you are thinking of doing a marine biology type study or ocean study in your school. The second homeschool update resource I want to give actually pertains to my sisters. And I do update on their education periodically. They started their school year much later than we did because they were traveling in the US up until December. So they haven't been doing school consistently all that long. We've got a solid January and February in now. So this is a resource that my youngest sister has been using, and that is the new literature guides that I've been writing for our little small business, Where'd You Learn That? And I have not yet done a video dedicated to these literature guides, but I will be doing that. I just wanted to wait until we had more to choose from before I did a dedicated video. But I've been creating literature guides that are not super overwhelming and super tedious and a lot of work and trying to learn every single thing you could learn from a book. Not that style of literature guides. I've been doing light and easy literature guides that just really help a child to dig into a story a little bit more, slow down, think about what they're reading, and get more out of it, improve their comprehension. And so I've released 5 of those literature guides now. Mostly they're around the upper elementary level, although I'm also planning to do some middle school and some high school level reads as well. But she's almost completed with her second literature guide. She did Carry On Mr. Bowditch and the literature guide for that. And she is now doing Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky is the literature guide she's currently working on. And we are finding that these guides are very, very helpful for her. She loves books. She gobbles up books, but she can struggle with comprehension, and she can struggle with identifying, well, what's the point of this? What does it mean? These certain actions done by a character, what does that mean? What's going on here? So she does struggle with comprehension, and having these guides to help her slow down, because she just wants to keep reading, help her slow down, think a little bit about what she read, have to answer some questions, have to realize that she doesn't know the answers, has to go back and figure out what those answers are, has been really helpful. I'm really excited about what I've seen with being able to actually use these literature guides with her, and I'm excited to keep creating more. I love books. I love delighting in the craft of writing, and I hope that comes through in these guides. The one I'm currently working on is a guide for The Fellowship of the Ring by Tolkien. So this is perhaps a slightly more challenging read. But yeah, so that's how that's been going. I'm not only releasing literature guides, we are actually using them in our family's homeschool. Next, I always like to highlight a favorite picture book that we've read recently, and Sunlight had us reading Our Animal Friends at Maple Hill Farm, which is of course a classic. I'm sure many of you have read this, but if you haven't, you should. I'm not even the biggest animal lover, but I just love the humor in the writing of this. It's like a very honest type of humor that's about animals and life with animals. It's fun, my boys love it. The one problem is that Sunlight T had this scheduled out to read over like 8 days of Sunlight, but it is a long picture book, but this is more the kind of picture book that my boys are like, nope, let's read the entire thing in a single sitting. And we have read this multiple times before, but I always love being reminded that it exists, pulling it out again. Definitely worthwhile of being a favorite. Now, how is Spanish going? We are continuing to use Beautiful Mundo and Llamitas in our homeschool, in our routine. We've gotten into a pretty good rhythm of finishing about 2 Llamitas lessons each week, as well as just typically going through one Beautiful Mundo week or unit every week. And we are enjoying that. To me, having that structure is a very good motivation and a very good guide for persisting in teaching my boys Spanish, even though that's not the easiest path as a non-native Spanish speaker. I have also been challenging myself to keep learning, keep improving my Spanish, writing down new vocabulary words as they come up, because writing things down really helps me a lot with remembering them. One little thing I wanted to point out, this is an activity that's repeated throughout the Llamitas course. This is the Llamitas course book. Dun, dun, dun. Now this is an activity that is an immersion activity. So this is not an activity that kids using this who don't speak Spanish are expected to do. This is more for the native speaker, which we are kind of in between. They've been exposed to Spanish their entire lives, but aren't dominant in Spanish. But the activity involves reading a passage about something to your child. This one is about an ostrich, and it's an ostrich introducing himself and telling you what he eats and what he does and what his life is like. Basically, pretty much factual, based on just like the science of what an ostrich is. So after reading this to your child, then you have comprehension questions, which are asked in Spanish, like ¿Qué comen las avestruces? ¿Qué comen los avestruces? So what do ostriches eat? And so I ask him those questions in Spanish and ask him all the other questions, and he's responding very well based on what he heard. He's responding very well to the questions, but he is responding in English. So in some ways, this is very encouraging to me, because I'm looking at all this and I'm looking at a 4-year-old and realizing, hey, my 4-year-old kid, I can read this to him completely in Spanish, which doesn't have pictures demonstrating what's happening, and I can ask him comprehension questions in Spanish and he can answer me. On the other hand, he's answering me in English, is what he's doing first of all. So that's showing me his receptive language, it's improving. He's got a lot of receptive language skills. He can understand what's happening. And I do know that, from general conversations telling him what to do, go put your shoes on, it's time for bed, it's time to eat. I do know that he can understand all of that in Spanish, but it is encouraging to me that it's like I'm reading 3 paragraphs in Spanish and he's understanding what it's saying. He's tracking with it. But at the same time, it also shows me the work we still have with him getting more comfortable with answering in Spanish. So when he does answer in English, then I will recast the answer in Spanish and have him repeat that after me, trying to get more comfortable with these phrases. He does, of course, say some things in Spanish, but it tends to be on his own terms at this point. So we're really trying to encourage, getting outside of what you're comfortable with, challenging yourself a little more with your other language. I don't know what to call it. It's not exactly, is it a second language? With one of your two languages. Next, everybody has really been wanting updates on how All About Reading is going. And where we're at is right about halfway through, maybe lesson 27 out of 55, somewhere right around there. We've completed the first book, we've started on the first few stories of the second reading book, and we've gotten to the lessons where basically all initial blends, consonant blends, and ending blends are introduced. So these are words like gift, where you have two different consonants at the end. Chop, okay, that's different because that's a combined sound, but we've got, so consonant blends at the end, consonants at the beginning, like frog. So we've gotten basically every kind of consonant blend at the beginning or end of a short vowel word. That's all been introduced now. And at that point, I realized, let's kind of take a few weeks. Well, that we just got to that point, and I decided pretty much this week, let's just kind of take a few weeks. I don't want to necessarily move far and fast. Let's go back and let's reread book one, because now I think he's read enough stories that we won't be dealing with the memorization issue. So we've gotten through, I think, the first 4 stories in this now, rereading it, and I think it's encouraging to me and to him of having him reread these now a few months after he first started reading this book, and to see how he is getting through them faster and a little bit more fluently. The good thing about starting early with teaching reading is I feel zero pressure at all to move fast. I'm just like, okay, he's got this CVC sounding out thing going. Let's just keep working and building comfort and fluency and speed with that little by little. We don't practice reading for a long time every day. It's not something that he tends to be super interested in. Let's spread this out. So that tends to be a short, consistent lesson every day. But I really believe, if you do 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week for a year, I think we'll be way, way farther than we are now with his skills by next year. So for us, I just think this is a journey of short, consistent practice. We started early, so I knew it wouldn't necessarily be a super, super fast road. I'm totally fine with that. It's not, just because you start early or just because you take a while to learn how to read, it doesn't mean it has to be a drag. It's just, we're doing bite-sized chunks to not move past where his attention span naturally is at this point. And then finally, if you guys have been watching, you know that we do Gentle and Classical Primer, and we've been doing that throughout this pre-K year. I am starting to feel kind of nostalgic now because the end of Gentle and Classical Primer is approaching. This week, when this video releases, we are starting our very last big book. The last 3 units are focused on Pilgrim's Progress, a child's version of Pilgrim's Progress. And I don't have the exact copy that was recommended in the program. I couldn't find it when I was in the US buying books, so I just got this one. I think this was potentially listed as an alternate, but there's a few different children's versions, young children's versions of Pilgrim's Progress. So we spend 3 weeks going through this book, which it's a good thing it's 3 weeks because it's a good little long book here. And that will be our last 3 weeks of Gentle and Classical Primer. And then we'll be ready to start the next thing. Now, on to my reflections for this month. And this month, my reflections are really dwelling on the fact that the hardest part of homeschool is humanity. It's really not homeschool or academics at all. It's just the simple fact that everybody involved in your homeschool is a human, which means that we are constantly dealing with human frailty. We are constantly dealing with issues of the heart, with issues of character. And I feel like that's really the exhausting part. The hard part of homeschool was never academics, it was humanity. But of course, academics always involves humanity. And in fact, we really could not, in any sense, pursue academics and set humanity off to the side somewhere. As much as we might think that would be easier, that's really just not how the world works, how it was designed to work or should work. Humanity is at the core. So I don't want to say that these hard things, the hard struggles that we have with the humanity of ourselves and the humanity of our children should be considered, oh, these human struggles are distracting me from the awesomeness of homeschool. They're not. They're not a distraction. They're not beside the point. They are the main point. The whole point of education and of teaching our kids is that we are teaching them mind, body, soul, heart, all of it, all of the parts of their little human selves. But I do think that we can acknowledge that, teaching the ABCs is actually, in a way, easier. It's weighs less heavy on our hearts than does teaching our children that you really need to stop running across the room, crashing into your baby brother, knocking him over just for the sheer fun of it. Parenting involves so many little struggles with the hearts and the sin natures and the desire of each little individual person that they want to be the boss, that they want to rule their own lives and decide what is right in every case, and to know that it's our job to teach them, no, you were not born wise. You were not born discerning everything that is right and everything that's wrong. And we need to build this relationship, and we need to come to a place where you trust your mom and your dad to help guide you and teach you into knowing right from wrong. So for me, humanity, human frailty is a harder aspect than any element of academic skill ever could be. And I do mean this as an encouragement to any of you who are maybe watching this and maybe you aren't homeschooling yet, you're thinking about it, but you're worried it might be too hard. Or maybe you're homeschooling little kids right now and you're worried it might get too hard later when the academics get hard. I've seen homeschool at every stage of life, and what I have observed right now with small children, what I have observed with big kids involved as well, is that the hard part of homeschooling is actually just parenting. So if you are already parenting, if you are already raising children and finding yourself responsible for their bodies, for their hearts, for their minds, for their souls and their spirits, you're already doing the hard part of homeschool. You're already doing the hardest part, even if you're not homeschooling. The hardest part is parenting. The hardest part is you're given that baby at the hospital and being like, okay, now you are responsible for this person, for their body, for their heart, for their soul, their spirit, their mind. You are responsible for the rest of their life. Do a good job. That's the hard part. ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, teaching about history, teaching about science, pales in comparison to the weight of that responsibility. Now, true, does the more hours in a day that homeschool gives us and the more time in the years give us more opportunities to bump up into the humanity and sinfulness of ourselves and our children? Yes, I do believe it gives us more opportunities, surely because there's more time. You have more time to run into that, but it's still the same job. It's still the same job of working and building, having all those hard conversations about what is a right choice in this situation? What is a wrong choice in this situation? What values are shown and displayed by the decisions that you are making? All of these hard conversations, all of these hard decisions, even humanity in the sense of, I wanted to do school today, but instead I'm spending school at the hospital because my child was running around and fell down and has to get his face stitched back together. Even that kind of humanity can feel like a distraction from the work of education, but it's not. Whether you're dealing with character and heart issues, whether you're dealing with health and physical needs, whether you're dealing with teaching good habits and rooting out some bad habits of the way we're talking or the way we're interacting with others, the way we're respecting others. That is the real work of homeschool. That is the core of it. That's the core of both parenting and homeschool. And that is really the hard part. It's the part that's hardest on my heart. And I think probably the same for many of you as well. So I don't mean this as a discouragement, but as an encouragement, that this is something that as parents, and especially as Christian parents, we think about a lot, that weighs on us a lot. And whether we homeschool or whether we don't homeschool, it's going to weigh on us a lot. I think you know, if you know me, I take education very, very seriously. It is something that's very important. It's something I find delightful in my life. But it's not actually the most important thing in life, right? It's a good thing, but it's not the most important thing. So that's just some thoughts I've been having this month based on real life and the hardest elements within a homeschool day. Then I did want to do a little update on how things are going with my goals. I shared my New Year's goals in a video at the very beginning of this year, and these are mostly personal goals and goals of how I maintain my own education, maintain my own discipline, and continue to dream big and in reasonable ways in this season of life as a young homeschooling mom with young kids. So I wanted to share a few updates. One, I had a goal of doing a Bible Project classroom class with my husband. We picked one that's on the first couple chapters of Genesis. So if you're unfamiliar with these classes, they are free. They are available online at Bible Project Classroom. They have different classes, and it's like 20 hours or something like that of lectures and conversations on 2 chapters of the Bible, basically. So it's very, very, very in-depth. We are, I think, almost 20% of the way through, which does not sound very impressive, but you have to realize I'm doing it with my husband, which means we have to coordinate time when both of us are available and both of us have the mental energy to listen to a class, which we're finding really interesting, really enjoying it. It's giving us great conversations together. I'm glad we're doing it. This is the second Bible Project class we've done together. But we tend to go fairly slowly because we just don't have all that much time to focus on something together. Another goal to update on, I am continuing to do my own reading, which does not involve reading aloud from picture books. And I was encouraged to do this by Angie from Science Mama, who is running a book reading challenge throughout this year. So that's 2 books a month, 1 fiction and 1 non-fiction following certain themes. And I am completing the challenge so far, which we're only 2 months in. But that's 4 books that are grown-up books. And I've appreciated this challenge and this encouragement to read interesting books that are not related to schoolwork and have had a lot of fun with that. Now, I did share in my goals video that I have a big dream of writing and creating a picture book for kids with my sister illustrating it. That I have started, that is making some progress actually in these first 2 months. I have started just the process of looking into literary agents and small publishers. I do not find that to be the most encouraging process in the world. Seeing what agents are looking for versus seeing what I am as a writer and my dream and vision for this book. It doesn't quite match up so far, but I will not give up too easily. If you ever have any leads for me, let me know about avenues for publication. So we still don't exactly know what direction that will go, but my sister's taking a class right now where she had an independent project that she could work on, and she decided to work on illustrations for this book as the independent project. So she was able to go through and do a rough storyboard of the whole book, and as she's showing me the storyboard, I'm in tears, just seeing how her art and her vision for the art is making everything come to life of what I imagined. And then she has sent me the first couple of sketches for illustrations. And again, I'm in tears, seeing how her art is just magical and bringing this little dream to life. And I still don't know what direction this is going to go. I think I might pursue doing some pitching of agents or publishers more seriously once I have some of her artwork to submit as part of the pitch. We will see this. I said this is a long haul dream. This might not happen this year. We don't know where it's going to go, but I did want to update that it's been exciting to me seeing some of this start to come to life. All right, that is my February homeschool update. I hope I did not drag it on way too long. Do give it a like if you like these updates, and let me know in the comments if you have been enjoying this series and want me to continue to keep it rolling throughout this school year and maybe next year too. Bye.